Let me first of all say thanks a lot to everybody for coming this evening. Program Director, I must apologize for the location of this podium. Because it seems to me normally we should be looking that way, not this way. But I hope you'll excuse us. I must also apologize for something else, which is that our program director just given us instructions as to what to say, or what to talk about rather. She's talking about the second meeting that we will do, not this one. One of our online publications, like all our media, have been putting out some stories, reports about this matter of local government. And the recent report says, no water, intermittent electricity supply, potholes, sewage in the streets. And this is a grim reality in many of South Africa's municipalities, and is the direct result of municipal mismanagement, and the prospects for many local governments look bleak. And it says while South Africans are heading for the ballot box on the 1st of November, they have calculated from a set of the paper, the publication, from a set of data painstakingly collated over the last 2 months that suggests that the crisis in the front line of service delivery is likely to deepen. And the index, the first data journalism project of its sort in South Africa, suggests that 43 municipalities, over and above the 87 already red flagged by government, are in the danger zone of collapse. And much more of that kind of comment. From Stelfontein to Mahikeng and Midrand to Mfuleni, the message is clear. Residents are tired of uncollected refuse, broken traffic lights, regular water, and electricity outages. I'm citing these things to say, certainly from the point of view of the ANC, we have had to recognize that this is the reality we face. That there is a serious crisis, certainly with regard to local government. And the second matter we've had to acknowledge about this is that, of course, for all of these years, the bulk of these years, since our liberation, since democracy in '94, the government has been, the ANC has been the government, nationally, provincially, and in the majority of these municipalities. And therefore, what the media has been reporting, as I've just read, is a reflection, in that sense, of the failure of the ANC. So, having acknowledged that, obviously it would be imperative that the ANC should then respond. It would be irresponsible merely to say, look, this is this tragedy. Let's go out and promise people that we will do something better when we don't mean it. Because it's a serious crisis. impacting negatively on millions of people. And from, you remember 1994, when we went into those elections, our slogan was a better life for all. You will see that slogan repeated in the current manifesto, local government manifesto of the ANC, a better life for all. So it has seemed to me a program director that rather than do what you say I should do, I should reserve it for the next meeting and talk about something else. The three matters. I think it's when we promise we will deliver water and roads and clinics and schools and do its sewerage and all of that. That surely must mean, one of the things it must mean, is that the resources will be there to do that. Because to build a road costs money, to build a school, to remove the buckets, toilet system and put in a proper bucket, toilet systems, all of that costs money. So we make all sorts of commitments in the manifesto. Who pays? That's a very legitimate question. Where are the resources going to come from for all of that? You will see, therefore, that there is one sentence in the manifesto which I'm quite certain many people, even those who've read the manifesto, will have missed. And let me read it to you. It says we must urgently finalize the social compact between the social partners to achieve our country's fundamental social transformation, to reduce and eradicate the plague of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. We must urgently finalize that social compact to produce those results. It's a strange sentence in a local government manifesto. But the reason it's there is because we had to answer the question, having made all of these promises in these 18 pages, where are the resources going to come from? As you campaign, I'm sure all of us, as we know, as you campaign around the country, one of the things that the people in the local communities will raise is jobs. In truth, those jobs are not going to come from local economic initiatives. Therefore, the absolute imperative to focus on what is happening to our economy, because it is that economy which must produce these resources. Hence this commitment in the local government manifesto. Now, I'm quite sure that all of us here, particularly our business and professional people, will be very familiar with what has been happening over the last 15, 18 months with regard to the matter raised in that sentence. Because something very positive happened in our country in the aftermath of the emergence of this COVID-19 pandemic, which is that for the very, very first time, in my view, for the very, very first time since 1994, we had all of these social partners at home more or less saying the same thing about what needs to happen. Government, business, labor, civil society, community, constituency, all saying what the pandemic has said to all of us is that we need to join hands and work together to change the situation, to address the consequences of the pandemic, but also to say, what is it, even before the pandemic came, we were already in trouble. What is it that we need to do together in order to address, I'm saying not just the consequence of the pandemic, but to go beyond that? What are these problems of unemployment and poverty, inequality that we had failed to solve? It's time that we get together to do something about that. This was the very, very first time you heard that being said in that way by everybody last year. And so you will recall that by September last year, the presidency, government, announced that an agreement had been reached at NEDLAC about a common approach to address these matters: unemployment, poverty, inequality. It was a common view and a common commitment by everybody. Let's join hands together and do something together. And as a consequence of that, the following month, that was in September 2020, following month, October 2020, President Ramaphosa, you remember, convened the Joint Houses of Parliament, where he presented the South African Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, and said that it was an outcome of this consultation and discussion among the social partners at NEDLAC. A few months before that, which was in July 2010, one of the social partners, that is business, they had got together as part of that common commitment. Let's do something together to change these material conditions in our country. So they had got together, business, and produced their own plan, or rather what they called a strategy, an economic recovery strategy, which they published in July 2010. So they were first of the blocks, that social partner, business, July. Government followed in October. Now, part of the tragedy is that since then, the social partners have not kept that commitment to work together to produce a plan which will be implemented, which will take this country away from this terrible past, which is impacting today on millions of our people, the poverty, the unemployment, etc. There has been virtually no movement with regard to that. So you have an economic reconstruction and recovery plan presented to the country by the President of the Republic, which contains very, very important commitments about what needs to be done to produce this positive economic outcome that we're talking about. It's very good. About infrastructure, about industrialization, about localization, about role of women, role of youth, and all of that. I think none of the social partners would disagree with that vision, this is what we want to do in order to get South Africa to where we need it to be. That document says, if we do all of these things that are in this economic reconstruction and recovery plan over the next 10 years, that will result in the addition of, well, it will result in the totality of 3.6 new jobs over 10 years. 3.6 million new jobs. And says that would be a growth rate of 3% a year. Now, the truth of the matter is that that growth rate and that job creation, positive as both are, will not take us out of where we are today. We'll probably find at the end of that 10-year period that the numbers of unemployed have not decreased and may very well have increased. The program itself, the plan, recognizes that because, for instance, it cites what the National Development Plan said. That the National Development Plan said the economy must grow at a rate of 5.4%, not 3. I think that's an acknowledgement that something more needs to be done. The business strategy was a 3-year plan, which should be followed later by other 3-year plans. But the first 3-year plan, they said would increase GDP by 1 trillion rand, create 1.5 million jobs, and increase tax revenues by 100 billion rand a year. And identified sectors of the economy where we had to focus. In truth, if you look at those figures, the figures produced by business about what is likely to happen if we implement their plan are better. The business figures are better. So, fortunately, as I was saying earlier, quite early on during 2020, all of the social partners said more or less the same thing about what needs to happen. And therefore, all of them insisted on the need to have a social compact. That we need a social compact to produce a common plan which should be binding on all of us. And that is why you then find in this local government manifesto of the ANC this sentence which I read to you, that we must urgently finalize a social compact between the social partners to achieve our country's fundamental social transformation, to reduce and eradicate the plague of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. That, in truth, is where the resources will come from. If this is done, what is said in this particular sentence, if it is done as it has to be done, then we will generate the resources that are needed in order to deal with these problems, which are very legitimately raised in the localities, in the local municipalities. Things I was reading about water, about roads, about, and so on. So I'm saying, therefore, that the reason this manifesto contains that sentence. It's a commitment. It's a commitment by the ANC to say, at last we must move on this matter, which is going to require that all these social partners get together. They take all of the different plans that they've produced and put them together and say, what is it that we agree, which will be binding? One of the, I think, outstanding things that has happened as a result of this common approach is that you have business collectively saying, we propose this program, economic development and so on, covering all of these various sectors, and we commit as a private sector to invest 1 trillion rand in the South African economy for 3 years, over a period of 3 years. Comrade Provincial Chair, this is the very, very first time in all the years of our democracy that business has made a statement of that kind. To say we pledge to invest 1 trillion rand over 3 years. And they say in that program, the public sector, government and so on, would have to find 2.4 trillion rand over that 3 years. So this is a perspective, you've never seen figures of this kind since '94. That in 3 years, the country would invest 3.4 trillion rand in the South African economy. That is the weight of the statement in this manifesto. We must, as these social partners, get together and indeed produce these funds, these monies, to invest in this economy, because I'm saying, in the context of local government, if we don't do that, these resources to meet these commitments that are here, we'll build the roads, we will deal with sewage, and we'll clean water will come, and it won't happen if we don't attend to this matter. So I think that this is, I think myself, a national matter. I think we should, all of us as South Africans, really insist to say we are going to make sure that this ANC keeps this commitment. Because without it, the country will sink. So I'm saying that that is the first thing. The resources that are required in order to make sure that we attend to all of these matters that people are correctly complaining about in the municipalities. You will have seen that the second matter, which the ANC has tried to attend to, is this issue of who are these people that we elect to be councillors? Because this is going to be the political leadership in local government. What's the quality of this leadership that we are encouraging everybody to vote for? Yeah. It's a serious question. And so you have seen the ANC, therefore, it had to respond to that question. And that's why you had this process of saying, let the communities be involved in terms of selecting the people who will be these candidates. Even what happened the other day, was it day before yesterday or whenever, when all of these candidate councillors of the ANC had to sign pledges and so on. It's in pursuit of the same thing. we have got to find a way of ensuring that the quality of the people who will manage the resources which will come out of this thing I was talking about earlier. We must not say to the people who are asking you to elect thieves. We've got to say, we're asking you to elect we're asking you to elect people who are leaders, responsible people. I don't know how many of you have seen the pledge and so on that people were asked to make. I pledge to listen to and always maintain open channels of communication with our people. I pledge to form and sustain working relationships with communities, NGOs, the private companies that benefit local economies. I pledge to spare no effort in rooting out corruption and all forms of nepotism and malfeasance in our organization and all levels of government. These are some of the pledges that this candidate councillors made. Now, it's quite easy, I think, for people to say, well, the ANC can see which way the wind's blowing, and so he decided to do this thing as some kind of stunt, just to convince people that it's turning a new leaf. Let me say something about that. You would have heard, I think, also these leaders of the ANC talking about renewal. What you've seen, what I've just described, is a reflection, it's a response to a very, very serious problem within the ANC. And that problem is that over the years, the quality of the membership of the ANC has degenerated. And it's a problem which the ANC leadership has recognized for a very long time. That this leadership is changing. You know, 1997, the ANC National Conference, my king, the then president of the ANC, Nelson Mandela, said a number of negative features within the ANC and the broad democratic movement have emerged during the last 3 years, since 94 that is. We have an inescapable responsibility to attend to these matters frankly and decisively in defense of our movement and our revolution. One of these negative features is the emergence of careerism within our ranks. Many among our members see their membership of the ANC as a means to advance their personal ambitions, to attain positions of power, and access to resources for their own individual gratification. That was in 1997. Now what you will find is a repetition of that sentence, of that assessment over the years. Our program director talked just now about Khalima Mutlande, who was addressing another meeting. When he was Secretary General of the ANC, that is 2005, he says facing the ANC, a consequence of this. And he says the consciousness of an individual can be influenced by the material conditions one finds himself or herself in. We owe it to ourselves first, the movement and society, to analyze in detail the implications of a liberation movement that has ascended to power and therefore controls huge resources. Being in power is rapidly becoming a source of political bankruptcy, in that members of the ANC fight for deployment, either as councillors, MPLs and MPs respectively, as if there is no tomorrow. In the local government elections, infighting was a common factor everywhere. He's talking about 2017, this 2016 that is. It is foreign to our movement for comrades to see deployment as a source of material benefit rather than the reason to serve the people. These fights among comrades turn the interests of our people off and push them away from the movement. As you can see, I'm saying that the ANC leadership has recognized this fact for many years. That's why I'm quoting Mandela in 1997 and Kwete Mantashe in 2017. They're saying the same thing. And the problem, of course, has been that how do you deal with it? Nelson Mandela had said, you must deal with this matter decisively. And I was at that conference, we all gave him a standing ovation. The problem, of course, is that what do you do? Because the Thabo Mbeki will come and say, I love the ANC. He'll come wearing a T-shirt, ANC written across there, and possibly recite the entirety of the Freedom Charter, and I want to be ANC, so they join. In the meantime, they've got another agenda. So I'm saying it's been always difficult to deal with this problem. Having recognized it, what do we do? So I had mentioned earlier that you must have heard some of our leaders talking about renewal. Because in the end, certainly the last conference of the ANC 2017 said there must be renewal of the ANC. You can't have a membership like this. Because this kind of membership, this is what it is producing. The ANC, the population is losing trust in the organization. The programs of the movement that are announced are not being implemented. The ANC corruption is being attacked. ANC is being identified with corruption, all as a consequence of this negative tendency in terms of the quality of the membership of the ANC, and therefore said, the conference said, therefore there must be renewal. There must be renewal of the organization so that the ANC becomes what it ought to be. Now, you will understand the reason I'm giving you all of this history is to explain why the ANC decided on these extraordinary measures to say, rather than depend on our branches to produce our candidate councillors, let's go to the people. Because the question, of course, naturally must arise. If you characterize the ANC in the way that these leaders of the ANC have done, and as I say, in the end, the National Conference, December 2017, says there has to be renewal. It actually says if it doesn't happen, the ANC is dead. How do you entrust an organization like that, which is not renewed, with the task of producing the candidates that we want? You can't. An ordinary and properly functioning branch of the ANC would not need to take special measures to understand the community in this ward. If you're an active member of the ANC properly, in touch with the people every day and addressing their problems and so on, you would know what kind of candidate would be welcome to this community. But because we don't have ANCs of that kind, branches of that kind, we had to get into these measures. So call the community, please help us. I'm saying it was an acknowledgement of the reality, that you can't just acknowledge reality, you've got to act on it. And so, as I was saying, we make undertakings about making sure that the people have houses and roads and da. You must answer the question, where do the resources come from? And having answered that question, you must say, who manages those resources? What kind of person is this? There is the ANC must still look at this question of the proper implementation of the decision taken at the last national conference. It's a question of renewal. It's going to be a very painful process because there are people who are going to be, who are very, very good at toy-toying, singing ANC songs, Viva 20,000 times. But are not ANC. And the problem with that is not just it's an ANC problem, it becomes a national problem. Because the ANC, with its weight and its size, this is the governing party. If this governing party misbehaves, it has a very negative impact on the country. You remember that in 2008, when we had that big financial crisis, it started in the States, and you had these big banks and so on. In the end, the government had to come in to bail them out. They kept saying, the Americans were saying, some of these banks are too big to fail. So they need to be rescued. In a sense, I'm saying today the ANC is too big to fail. Because it fails, the country will collapse, it will fail. That's a problem. And that's why I'm saying that, for instance, we as a country must keep the ANC to its promise. When it says we must urgently get the social partners together to produce an economy which deals with unemployment, It must keep that commitment, it must act on it. It can't be just in order to get votes in the 1st of November. It must keep that commitment to make sure that this happens. If it doesn't happen, South Africa is dead. The last point, the chairperson, resources, proper leadership. That includes the, actually I should have said this, the ANC, I noticed, have already set up panels to interview the people who will be the ANC candidate mayors, so that we don't get caught again with these people who are popular because they do very well. The rest, 226, are local municipalities. Now, I think it's important that the ANC has had a look at this thing. When we're talking about local government playing this positive role in terms of development, addressing all of these challenges, whether it's water delivery or whatever, and also preparing a role in terms of job creation. Which of these local government structures are best placed to play that kind of role? And so the decision was taken that let's have what is called this district development model. So take the 44 districts and the 8 metros and make these the focal point in terms of development at the local government level. Because the local municipalities are too small to be able to play that role. So what this means is that there really we must have a serious relook at the functioning of our system of local government. I was reading, for instance, a quarterly report of National Treasury. For the period 1st of July 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. And one of the things it says that capital expenditure levels are at an average of 62.5%. And then it says it must be noted that sustained low capital spending has potentially serious implications for the government's ability to meet the targets for expanded access to water, to sanitation, electricity, housing, as well as job creation. That's the sustained low capital spending. That's a capacity problem in the municipalities. As a result of which, though even resources are there, we fall behind in terms of access to water, sanitation, electricity, housing, job creation. Now, I think government has correctly said, why don't we go for this district development model and therefore make the districts, that includes the metros, the focal point in terms of meeting those sorts of obligations. I don't know who among us has had a look at a very important report. You'd find it on the internet. It's a report of the South African Presidential Economic Advisory Council, set up by President Ramaphosa, the Presidential Economic Advisory Council. In October last year, it produced what it called briefing notes on key policy questions for South Africa's economic recovery. I'm mentioning it because it then discusses at great length and quite correctly this matter about what is meant by this district development model. What is its relevance in terms of local government and what are its benefits? It'd be very, very good if people can have a look at that, because I think it explains very properly the need for us to have a look at the system of local government in order to make sure that it's focused correctly in order to do the work that needs to be done. For instance, one of the proposals, which I think is correct, they say that the metros actually have got the capacity to raise their own funds from the market, apart from revenues. I'm sure Mayor Johannesburg City has issued some municipal bonds, and people buy them, and so the municipality has got extra capital or extra money to put into development. But not Oliver Tambo district in the Eastern Cape. Rurally doesn't have that capacity. For instance, just to read you a little bit of what that advisory council says. They say, for instance, in the OR Tambo district, less than 1% of capital spending in 2016-17 came from own revenue. So you are expecting investment in roads and this and that in the OR Tambo district. It's not going to happen. Unless there are transfers from the center. And transfers are not going to happen to the center if the fiscus is in trouble. So they suggest one of in fact, the single biggest financier of local government is the Southern African Development Bank, apart from the transfers, the revenue sharing. That the Southern African Development Bank must get out of financing the metros, because the metros can raise money to do that. But it must focus on these other districts, like Oliver Tambo district. I'm just giving that as one example of some of the changes that would need to happen so that we empower local government in a way such that it is capable of responding to the challenges. If local government, Oliver Tambo district, less than 1% of capital spending come from own revenues. You can imagine, as a district, you can imagine what the situation is at local government level. That is why I was saying that therefore the government has said district development model. Let's go that route. More work needs to be done. You will find that reference. You'll find that reference in the manifesto, talking about the district development model. It's exactly that reason that, in fact, the manner in which we've structured local government, some of it, President Ramaphosa in that introduction to the manifesto says, let us bring the district development model to life to ensure better planning, coordination, and monitoring at local and district level. That's why the matter is raised. So in the end, Program Director, I'm finishing now. I'm saying you'll find these things in the ANC manifesto. You may not understand why. And they may come across as just being, these ones are just looking for votes. Which, of course, we are looking for votes. But in the end, there's a logic. There's a logic behind these proposals which has got to do with the future of the country. Let us generate the resources that are needed. Let us make sure that resources fall into honest hands, capable, committed to serving the people. And let's make sure that the municipal system of government is designed in a way such that indeed it contributes to the solution of these problems. But thanks a lot, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President. Thanks so much for the Wonderful words. And I'm going, Sipho, we're going to take President up for this second session. We definitely need you. But I think it was a very good one. This one, indeed, it's direct to the issues that we're facing. And I'm sure Premier will agree with me that we will still need him to advise us at the cabinet level in terms of the resources and channel us to the right places where we can get some of the people that can assist us in bringing more resources to the province. So colleagues who are going to take hands, who will take 10 hands. And I'm going to start from my colleagues and my comrades on my right. Then I will go to the middle. And then I will go to the comrades on my left. I will just take those questions and then I will sit down and hand over to the president to come. I will give you numbers. It will be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, and number 10 behind the pole. So in that order, comrade number 1. Khotso, will you please raise your voice, Khotso? Take this one. Hello? Khotso, take this one. Where are the people that are helping us with sanitizing? Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Program Director. I am Khotso Maja from Progressive Professionals Forum, and I've got two quick questions. One relates to the selection of councillor candidates within a context of a degenerating membership quality. What seems like a temporary solution of taking the process to the community. And I say that in some areas, as we go to the communities, we recognize that even at the level of the community, there is a huge possibility of, with questionable character, still bringing it out that process. President, is that emergence of the ANC process will still go into the community using resources and other means to mobilize support. And these people still emerge out of our process. And perhaps the only solution, and back to yourself as a question, is it more easier rather to strengthen the ANC capacity itself to produce the best quality candidates instead of this process of opening up the democracy, rather be more central but prioritize quality? And the last part is that of the social compact. What should be done in the instance where private sector is not necessarily playing ball and releasing funds so that we are able to invest in, for example, infrastructure development and other projects that are going to yield jobs, that are going to grow our economy and make it inclusive? What should be done in that instance? And what should be the role of the ANC? And perhaps as an advisory point from you, Mr. President, to the current leadership as to how exactly to engage with the private sector and get it to unlock the resources at its disposal. Thank you very much.
It's not on. Oh, it is. Okay. Thank you. Good evening. The name is... This mic is... Okay. The name is Lutfia Dean. And my... The criticism is necessary as young leaders. It's important that we take it in and use it moving forward in these last few days of campaigning and as we enter terms of different leadership roles. As a young person during these door campaigns, we've engaged with... In engaging with these young people, we've seen a lot of dismay, a lot of disappointment. So my question to you, President, is how young leaders ensure that we create this compact strategy and this platform for young business owners, entrepreneurs, and graduates to establish a network. And then my second thing is, how do we take this global? Because we rate to 5.4%, but we're leaving of the global sphere economically. So how integrate South Africa strongly to say we have an equal playing field in the globalization international relations? Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, President. My name is Thabo Mbeki. I'm from an export council. I'm also within the agribusiness, and I'm also a member of the ANC Youth League. So my question would be, the President spoke about the development from a district. Okay, so he spoke of from development from a district. I'll speak about the Krisani district.
Maybe to ask them to come and stand here rather in a queue. Yeah, it's fine. They must come.
Okay, I'll speak Krisani district in the Eastern Cape. The district is within the Enoch municipality. Agriculture.
They must come closer.
There's development. There's thin.
Come closer.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
And one question. One question. One question.
Okay, yeah, I'll speak about, I'm from an export council. I'm also in agribusiness, I'm also part of the ANC Youth League within Gauteng. So my question, you spoke about development within a district, right? My specific interest would be the Krisani district within the Eastern Cape. So the Eastern Cape is an agricultural they're looking to increase employment, and they're targeting agriculture, agribusiness. So as the export council and as agribusiness person, we've been approached by investors, foreign investors, to invest within that district, particularly the Enoch Mgijima municipality, right? I'm not referring to the rugby field or whatever that was. But yeah. So we're speaking about agriculture, agribusiness. So now, Eastern Cape, the Enoch Mgijima, I come from there, Ekomani. Ekomani, the DBSA, wants to fund Equindustria. We have investors also, us as a business, as an export council. I've been there for the last 10 years. When we get there, we don't really know the councillors, they're not local. So because we love the Eastern Cape, we love Komani, we love the district, we always seek investment to try to plow back into where we come from. We've been striking back and forth. Itwiza is a company which I grew up. It started while I was still in high school. It wants to leave the town now, right? Okay, time. So the question would be, how do we hold our ANC accountable there in terms of the district, and how do they allow us as business to come and invest and assist also? Because it's not as if but we want to bring solutions. So how do they open a door to welcome us to bring that?
Thank you. I think if we can just stick to one question to all of us colleagues, because President is supposed to leave by 9 o'clock. He is addressing another meeting. And I will want to appeal that if we can be orderly, please, no movements. There's too much movements. I think now I'm going to put my cap of being a former speaker. One question strictly, no movement. Let's be orderly. The other people are listening out there, so it will be really bad if we can appear the way that we're doing. So, number 4. And please, ANC comrades, don't ask questions. I've said strictly business people. Thank you. I know you are.
Greetings. Mr. President, my name is Mpomoloi, born and bred in Gauteng. I'm a graduate of the University of Free State, the founder of VS Legacy. I have a construction company and also an innovation company. The construction company was established to fund my innovations company because I do not trust our current government to assist in funding the innovations we have, which I believe can change a lot of people's lives in South Africa. We are in need of proper tools and support. Yet I'm sitting here and I'm unable to even approach government because it cannot be trusted when it comes to innovations or money in general. With the current pandemic, we can't even approach private companies because they are also closing down. What is the current and possibly incoming government going to do so that they are more approachable and trustworthy? There's a need to focus on local economic development and ensure that innovations during the 4th Industrial Revolution create an independent South Africa that does not depend on international corporations. Thank you.
5.
Good evening, all. Ex-President Thabo Mbeki, thank you very much for joining us this evening. When I got the invitation to come and join the event today, I wasn't sure whether to accept it. But out of respect for you and what you've done for this country, I accepted the invitation. And based on the discussions we've had this evening, I do not regret to have been here. We had frank discussions and intellectual discussions, so thank you for that. My name is Mduduzi Mlaba. I'm the president of the National Society of Black Engineers. I think, ex-president, what we've seen over the years is that I think the ANC government needs to do better to show respect for local professionals. We see problems and we write position papers on what needs to be done to fix the country. You spoke about municipalities, how dysfunctional they are. We wrote a paper to the then Minister of Corporate Governance, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, and we outlined exactly what you said on the podium, that we should not put political deployees to run the municipalities. We need to find competent technical people to run them so that the engineers that are there cannot be put under undue pressure to make decisions that are not right because people have conflict of interest. Of late, there was a big storm when Cuban engineers were brought into the country to come and solve our water and sanitation issues. And we stood up and said, we cannot have that because it's 27 years after democracy. We now have competent black engineers who are qualified to do the work. Why are we doing that? And we hosted Minister Lindiwe Sisulu at Waterfall. And we presented solutions to her. We're not just going there to complain and complain. We said, this is what needs to be done. And to her credit, she listened to us. She said, I did not know that you exist. Now that I know, I'm going to take you on board. And we went to Kabeja. And we got an understanding of what the issues are. And then when we came back, we then submitted a proposal, a memorandum of understanding on how we can work with that department to fix the issues. And she then said she was going to give it to her lawyers so that we can conclude it and get to fix places like Emfuleni and I just forget the town there, but it's next to Emfuleni municipality, which is very dysfunctional in terms of water and sewage. Before we knew it, she was gone. There's now a new minister in charge. And we've been struggling to get to him, to explain to him that we've made a proposal. We understand that you are challenged in terms of technical skills, and we can help. And we haven't been successful to get to him. And last week in the newspaper, the head of infrastructure development in the office of the presidency writes a newspaper article that there is money to invest in infrastructure in order to deal with our unemployment, which is currently the highest in the world. And he then goes to say there's no capacity. I'm like thinking, I think we went public and said, we've got engineers in the country who are qualified. Why go out and say you do not have the capacity when you have not even engaged the local engineers to come to that conclusion? So to cut a long story short, ex-president, can you please, what you've told us this evening, to please talk to your colleagues in the ANC government? That we cannot, all the successful nations in the world, they take their engineers seriously. You go to Asia, you go to the US, you go to Germany, Europe. They are successful because they take their engineers seriously. Lastly, just to give credit to Premier David Makura, he joined us for the hydrogen economy in Daba. And it was very refreshing to get a senior political, ANC political leader who is committed to make sure that he supports the local black engineers and black entrepreneurs in saying that he's got a project to install the hydrogen in that smart city. And he's committed to help us to make it happen. And I think what needs to happen is we need to talk to the Department of Science and Innovation to say that it has taken them 13 years to produce a roadmap on hydrogen. And now they are not releasing it because the minister has to have a ceremony before that roadmap is issued. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Mr. President, Program Director, and everybody gathered here, my name is Namhla Mxenge, and good evening to you all. My question to you, sir, is in relation to the voter turnout in South Africa. So voter turnout is an indicator of the vitality and the health of the democracy of that particular country. And in South Africa, we have one of the lowest voter turnouts. And if you look at the statistics, the voter turnout for people 40 years and below is significantly lower than the older generation. So my question to you is, what is the source of this voter turnout, and what can the ANC do in order to ensure that this is turned around? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and good evening, President Mbeki. There's the biggest paradox of my lifetime. It's the reconciliation of a better life for all with the perception that is out there, and to what you've said, that the failure of the ANC is not only just the failure of the ANC, but the failure of the country as a whole, maybe even the region and the continent. Now, that is a paradox, which is highly true. Now, you once made a mention in one of your lectures, President Mbeki, that said one of the African leaders Augustino Neto had once said, for any nation to thrive, especially at its developmental stage, is for the politicians and officials not to be involved in business. One of our biggest problems or challenges in the country is moonlighting politicians and civil servants. We find ourselves competing with the very same people that we give our proposals to, and we expect them to assist us. And you see your project being carried out by somebody else who doesn't even know how to carry it out, resulting in the failure of those projects. Now, it is said you cannot play capitalists without capital. You cannot be a capitalist without capital. And unfortunately, we are living in a capitalistic world. However brutal it is, our government has dismally failed in the developmental finance. You find your ITCs and the others dabbling in exactly the same space as your commercial banks. And we have failed our people. What the Afrikaners did, they acknowledged the fact that they were coming from poverty, having been left by the British, and made soft loans, grants in most cases, to ensure that their people try and fail, and not measure us against somebody who's already on a 50-meter mark. Hey, I'm supposed to finish the race at the same time as that person when I'm starting at a negative pace. Now, what is the ANC government doing to ensuring that we play in the capitalist environment with at least half the resources that are needed for us to succeed? Things like the Resources Bank. Oh, by the way, I'm from SAMDA, which is South African Mine Development Association. I'm one of the directors in SAMDA. The biggest problem we are having, we are saying people should own their own mineral resources, and yet the requirements that are there, they do not facilitate ownership by black people. We cannot afford exploration. Exploration is a gamble. It's a finder. You're looking for gold in the dark. But our government must be able to take that risk if it is to empower its own people, where they blindly give us money, knowing that there is some form or basis of a logic in what we're saying, and be able to go and do exploration, and not allow your Canadians, your Australians, and recently your Chinese coming into our country, taking over these resources, because you find a black person, you get a mineral right or a mining right, you can't even afford a wheelbarrow, for crying out loud. And they come and they dilute you to next to nothing, and we expect to achieve our mining charter objectives. We will never achieve those. So please, do speak to your, as an ex-official member of the NEC, speak to them. You're an economist. We think you are a statesman and an elder. Speak some wisdom to them, please.
President, my name is Masai Butani, and I'm just here as a concerned young person. Yes. Now, radical economic transformation, President, at least as a policy adopted at our conference, how do we realize that, especially in a context of land? And I'm bringing this context of land from an angle of history. The land was dispossessed from its people forcefully. And I don't find this in my head or something. I find this in a case well documented saying that the land was dispossessed through a barrel of a gun and trigger. How do we ensure that young people like us, black women, and black people in general, how do we ensure that we take into consideration radical economic transformation as a policy and redistribute, or perhaps as a land reform program, bring back the land for us to be able to use it and to work on this as the Freedom Charter dictates? President, there is a recent case, President, on that the mining charter is nothing but an element of guideline or an instrument of policy. Such things, I think, they are problematic, especially on this issue of radical economic transformation, because we end up having a mining charter which was agreed upon by various stakeholders, important stakeholders to the mining charter, and then a court comes and says, no, mining charter is only an instrument of policy. This affects many other sectors because at the end of the day, we fail to at least realize radical economic transformation or economic transformation in simple words. So how do we deal with such elements of anti-revolutionary? Last question. We have heard about careerists. And I think it's not the first time we speak about careerists in our movement. But all the time, I think it is intentional that you never propose a solution. Perhaps I should ask you directly that, what is your view? Do you think they are careerists in the movement? Do you think they should be dealt with decisively? And if they should be dealt with decisively, how must they be dealt with decisively? Should they be suspended? Should they be expelled? Should, as others allege, should various state organs be used against them, which is wrong? But what must happen to these careerists that we find in the movement in order of renewing, ensuring that we have unity and we save our organization? Thank you very much, President.
Good evening, Comrade Mvuyelwa. Thank you for giving us. Oh, I'm assuming. Oh, is it? Okay, no problem. Good evening, Comrade Mvuyelwa. I just wanted to say thank you for giving us more than we expect. You always do that all the time. Much appreciated, and thanks for being honest all the time when you do your presentations. Mine, I wanted to say, as I'm sitting there and listening to you, I'm thinking, as long as the ANC is fighting amongst each other, and there's divisions within the ANC, and there's corruption, it's going to take a long way for us to fix this, so that we can get the voters to actually have faith in the organization. There's a lot of infighting, there's a lot of divisions and corruption. Now, you also have policies, the government policies. I'll make an example, women empowerment, for instance. It looks like there's a lot of gap between the policy developers and the implementers. Women empowerment has been there for a very, very, very long time, but we don't see it practically. I'm one of the women in business. My name is Busi Swasimoi, by the way, Mama Duna. So how are you going to, or government, how is the government going to make sure that the policy developers and the policy implementers, they actually work hand in hand to make sure that they achieve the government's plans as they are in the government policies? That's where we're also failing as the organization. Now, I'd like to also understand what is your view with regards to the trajectory of our political economy when it comes to both growth and obviously the women advancement. That's my last question. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Tulani. I just want to correct one statement that every successful country takes engineers seriously. I would say every successful country takes accountants and economists seriously. But Mr. President, you spoke about 2.5 trillion and 1 trillion to be invested. What interests me is that these trillions are not even coming from out of the country. They're here in the country. They are not invested because there's no confidence. So if you look at prescribed assets, I just want to get your view on your prescribed assets, because if you look at PIC has not invested in the infrastructure. And if you ask them, invest in SAA, they say, why do we invest in SAA? Because pensioners will lose money. So the link between capacity and investment maybe if I can take you, just have your take, capacity, investment, and prescribed assets. That link.
Thank you. Can we allow President to respond to some of the questions that have been asked?
I don't know where we. I doubt if we've got enough time to answer all of these questions. But let me try. Our colleague, the first one who posed a question, raised a matter about the private sector and its role within the social compact, its willingness to invest. It's an important and a very legitimate question. I'm a pensioner, which means I'm unemployed. And so some of my time I therefore work at the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. Now, so the foundation were looking at these things I was discussing. The state of the economy, what are we doing, what does the social compact mean, and all of that. And because we were worried about what was not happening, we decided that we need to talk to all of the social partners individually. So we engaged the business sector to say to them, you have agreed with the others to have this social compact to produce the following. What are you doing about that? So they told us, they gave us all of their documentation on this matter and indicated where they thought the blockage was. And said, we as a private sector, committed ourselves, I mentioned the document that they issued in July last year, we stand by that. We finished that report, we handed it over to government. It was our contribution to this discussion among social partners. And they said to us then, I can't remember when it was that we talked to them, that the government had not responded. So government was quiet. So we talked to labor, we talked to the social sector, we talked to the economic cluster in government. And with regard to the economic cluster, we decided that rather than talk to the cluster, let's talk to the individual ministers, economic ministers. So we spoke to 13 of them. Minister of Finance, of Transport, of Agriculture, of whatever. To pose the question, we as government have said, here is an economic reconstruction and recovery plan. What are you doing in your ministry with regard to that? Just check the budget statements. You know what happens in the budgeting process. That at some point during the year, the ministers must go and defend their individual budgets in Parliament. Just have a look at that. I'm sure you'll find it in the Hansard or in the websites of the departments. And tell me how many of them referred to that recovery plan. None. I'm saying these are government ministers. The president, our president, national president, Ramaphosa, says this is a national government plan. 6 months later, his ministers are in parliament, and they don't talk about the plan. Something is wrong there. But I'm saying with regard to the private sector, they said to us, look, we're committed to what we said. And what we're asking for is for the presidency to lead us. And we're waiting. That is why I was quoting the statement from the manifesto and saying it's our common responsibility to make sure that the ANC lives up to that commitment. Because as we understand it, all of the other social partners are saying we're ready to engage. And here is the problem. This leadership that must come from government. You know, you'd remember that many, many years ago, we talked about two economies, a first and a second economy here. There was some theoretical debate about that as to is this right or wrong and so on. But the point is this, it remains true to this day, that where you have had any economic development in this country since '94, it's very visible to see that what remains left behind are the former Bandustans, rural areas where the black people were, and the urban townships, black urban townships. So I'm saying that these two economies remain. Now, in the context of the social compact, which says we must do something, in fact, in reality, to reduce poverty. What does reduction of poverty mean? Reduction of poverty means, and unemployment and all that, means you must cease to have two economies. You can't perpetuate the result, a legacy of colonialism and apartheid, which is what has happened. If you perpetuate that legacy, then you will not end poverty and unemployment. So I'm saying that in the context of the social compact, that social compact must incorporate within it the eradication of this difference between these two economies by making sure that the black sector, which are the ones I'm saying, black townships, rural areas, Bandustan areas, they've got to catch up with the rest. That must be in the planning, that must be in the social compact, and therefore in terms of even talking about this, our local government structures. That's what I'm saying. You see, if you deal with the district municipalities, I mentioned the case of Oliver Tambo. The district, it would happen, it would be the same as Krizani. When I was saying that, for instance, one of the proposals is this major financier of local government, that is the DBSA, the metros don't need the DBSA. These districts need the DBSA. But precisely because the DBSA is going to put in so much money into OR Tambo or Krizani or whatever, they will want to make sure that there is capacity to manage those resources properly. Because part of your problem in that Krizani and so on is that I, who come from Oliver Tambo, or Krizani or whatever, have migrated. I live in Johannesburg and Cape Town. I might visit, but I'm an engineer, I'm a technician, I'm an accountant, I'm a whatever, an engineer. But I'm not an engineer in Krizani. So I'm saying that the MAT is not just making capital money available for development, as might come from the DBSA, is also the capacity to manage and use that money. The district municipality must be given that capacity. So I'm saying that there's a complex of interventions that we need to make through this social compact, which would address a number of these issues, like the matter that is raised, for instance, about women's empowerment and the economy. That ought to be part of that process. If you are rebuilding the South African economy so that it addresses all of these matters that are mentioned, end of poverty, inequality, and all so on, you must address gender inequality. It has got to be an integral part of the planning. On that gender issue, I don't know, I've not been in government for some years now. I don't know what they are doing there. But, no, I'm saying I don't know because I'm not there, that's all. The concept and the practice of gender mainstreaming. When you deal with the issue of women's empowerment, is that being addressed? Gender mainstreaming, because it's a very important concept in the practice. In many years when we were in government, we had big fights with the women's movement because I'm sure they've never forgiven me up to today. That includes my wife. Because we were resisting the idea of a women's ministry. We're saying no. That the minister of women is the president. The minister of women's affairs must be the president. Because the matter of women's empowerment affects all departments of government. Now you have a minister of economy, women's affairs, who wants to go and talk to the minister of finance. Minister of finance will say, minister, please leave me alone. Because they are equal, these ministers. But the minister of finance cannot say that to the president. That's gender mainstreaming, to make sure everybody engages this issue. I'm not sure what is happening in government with regard to that. But I'm saying that's part of this planning. I was going to say, Sia, where are you? Oh, there you are. That's Sia Kebe. We work together at the foundation. Our colleague there, the engineer, I was going to say, can you please give your details to him so that we can then follow up on what you said. I'm quite sure that we should be able to talk to, I thought you were talking about Minister Nkunu Senzo. I'm quite sure we'd be able to talk to him about that. So I'm pleased if you can give him the details so we can follow up on the matters that you were raising. One of our colleagues talks about radical economic transformation. I'm not quite sure what is meant by it. No. The definition I've seen, the explanation I've seen of radical economic transformation that I've seen is the State of the Nation address of President Zuma in 2017, where he discusses this is radical economic transformation. So I read it and read it to help me to understand. It's actually black economic empowerment. That's what it looks like to me. You see, take the Constitution says, of the Republic, says we must produce a non-racial and a non-sexist South Africa. In our situation, I've never had a more radical statement. How do you produce a non-racial South Africa? Where all of these racial inequalities, and they are gone. That requires a radical transformation of the country to achieve a non-racial South Africa. How do you achieve a non-sexist South Africa? Same. What are the ways and means that you must use in order to get there? I very much agree that when, for instance, it said one of the policies that we must help to the emergence of black industrialists and so on. Some of our colleagues spoke here about they are young black business people. Sure, we must give the support. But the fact that we have 1,000, 10,000 successful black capitalists does not mean we've got a non-racial South Africa. We've got 10,000 successful black capitalists. That's black empowerment. That's part of what is described as radical economic transformation, not radical. Because the millions of us might remain very poor. 10 million are super rich, the rest of us remain poor. So I'm saying that I don't quite know what is meant by it. But you see, just to say, without the slogans, what is it that we do to produce a non-racial South Africa? What's step number 1 and 2 and 3? That I would understand. Maybe the people who are talking about this a radical economic transfer might help in that context. You see, our colleague here talked about the land question and referred to the Freedom Charter. The Freedom Charter says, the land shall be shared among those who work it. That's Freedom Charter. Yeah. I don't work the land. Why do I want to share it? Why? According to Freedom Charter, let the land be shared among those who work it. So there's when the issue was raised, issue arose about our people have been dispossessed of land at the point of a gun, as our colleague said, quite correct. We must therefore dispossess land and to give it to our people. So I say, since when has the ANC had our people and not our people? It's not ANC. ANC doesn't have such a notion. As these ones are our people, these are not our people. It doesn't exist, not in ANC policy. It might exist in other organizations' policies. So the ANC has got to say, this land question has not been solved. The fundamental policy position of the ANC is spelled out in the Freedom Charter. The land shall be shared by all those who work it. If necessary, quite correctly, if necessary, expropriate without compensation, that's fine. But the objective, what's the objective of all of this? Program director, it's 8:05. I think maybe we need indeed another session. Our last colleague asked questions about capacity investment, prescribed assets, and said quite correctly, when I was saying that the business plan strategy talks about investment for the next 3 years of 3.4 trillion rand. And he said, and that money comes from inside. He was quite correct. It's resources that are within the country. And the challenge really is to say, in the context of the social compact we're talking about, what is it that we do in order to release these resources? He talked about the PIC. The amount of money that is in the savings sector of the financial sector would be over 10 trillion rand. If you engage them, that's the savings sector, including PIC, engage that sector, what they are saying is that we are very ready to invest, bearing in mind that these are people's savings, but very ready to invest in infrastructure, but it can't be, we're not investing in something that the returns must be in a year's time. A 15-year project, 20-year project, fine. There is no hesitancy, as far as I can see, in engaging the business people. There is no hesitancy in terms of investing in infrastructure. They are saying, where are the instruments? What is it that you want me to invest in? What is this investable project? Bearing in mind that these are pension money, the money belongs to the workers. You can't just spend it anyhow. But where are these projects investable so that indeed these trillions that are within the savings sector can then be put in there? You know that very well, this thing about amending Section 28 was to create the space for the people in control of the pension funds indeed to invest in infrastructure. But I'm saying that from our own interaction, we haven't sensed any hesitation in terms of investing in investable projects to do with infrastructure. So they must be challenged to say, here is a project, it requires 1 trillion rand to invest, like this and that and the other, and let's see how they respond. But I'm saying that in our own engagement with these social sectors, including this one, we have not found any hesitation. And it's a very strange thing. That's why I'm saying it's very exciting. It's for the first time since '94 that you have the private sector in this country take the, basically white, take the posture that it is taking now. So there is a capacity problem. I was mentioning, for instance, that we talked to a lot of these economic ministers. And this is one of the questions that we would pose. Any problems with regard to capacity? In the context of recovery and reconstruction. And indeed, in some instances, they have said yes. This is the nature of a capacity. And we've tried from the foundation side to help with regard to that, to say they would look, for instance, one ministry said they are looking for economists of this kind. So we helped them, we found them, and the economists fortunately agreed to do that. So there is a capacity problem in various ministries, as there are serious capacity problems in local municipalities. But they can be addressed. Our colleague, the black engineer, as well as the accountant and the lawyer and the economist, were quite right. There is indeed a lot of capacity in the country. But in the end, let me just finish by saying this. You know, one day I get a call. I was at home. There's a missed call. So I can see on the phone. There's a missed call from a 021 number. That's Cape Town. So I phone the number. And the person in Cape Town responds. So I say to him, look, as a missed call, it came from that number. I don't know who called. So I am returning the call. So the person says, no, you see, this is the provincial headquarters of the ANC. That is a common number, so it could have been any extensions in the building, in the office. So I can't tell you who called. So I say, okay. And then he says, who are you? So I told him, I said, no, my name is so-and-so. What company do you work for? Now, this is the provincial headquarters of the ANC in Cape Town. That's a true story. But it tells you something about who are these people who have become members of the ANC. I had said earlier when I spoke that the ANC must take very seriously. I said, we still have to engage very seriously the matter of the renewal that was decided at the last conference. The colleague was asking, what are we doing about? How do you deal with these careerists and so on? We've got to deal with that renewal challenge. The Veterans League of the ANC, has made a proposal about this, that they, because they're Veterans League, they are not interested in posts, in being re-elected or whatever. They would like to lead in the process of the implementation of that resolution, because they are Veterans League. And they've written down a very detailed plan as what they propose should be done. So it's not as though there are no ideas as to what is to be done to deal with these careerists. The matter, of course, has got to still to be approved by the National Executive Committee of the ANC, but the Veterans League National Executive Committee has volunteered and has given a detailed plan as to what they think should be done. That would include finding out whether this telephonist in Cape Town is really ANC. But thanks a lot, Nde.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much. How we wish Ubusisihlangu ukwazi ba ungagugi. We are going to allow Premier Umakura to say a few words, and then we take it to the mayor to give us concluding remarks. Honorable Premier.
I would like to say that on behalf of the Provincial Executive Committee, we will invite President Mbeki to a very focused lecture on the renewal of the ANC. And so I want to commit again to the PEC that it will not be for members of the Provincial Executive Committee alone. We have technology today. Anybody can join that lecture and participate as far as possible with the carrying capacity of the platform we will use. Because I can hear that a lot of concerns at the back of what you are raising here is the interest to get things right in the ANC. Not around election time, but to do that which will assure South Africans, future generations, that our country realizes its dreams, its vision. So that's the commitment I would like to make. And that is not for ANC members only. You know, the renewal of the ANC is not an interest for ANC members only. It's for many South Africans, as President Mbeki said, that it is in the interest of our country that the ANC sorts its house, it sorts itself out and puts its house in order. So we will do that. So those of you who are here tonight, we know you came as professionals and business people, and this evening wasn't open just for ANC members. But President Mbeki has summarized the case that the ANC is putting before South Africans about what we want to do, particularly with local government, and that if we don't pay sufficient attention to that, we can have great plans and great dreams. A lot of all these things are happening at a local level. So I whispered to President Mbeki, and he has confirmed. We will just sort out the date. He has confirmed that he will be available for that lecture. So that is the lecture on the renewal of the ANC. I also just want to say to you that he himself has said in the National Executive Committee that this matter needs to be discussed. There's no single person who's got an answer. It's not like one place where we will find all the answers. But we must get, if we are to get South Africa right, we must get the ANC right. That's what renewal is about, really. Renewal is about sorting out the problems of our country. And at the head of that is the ANC. So you have listened to him this evening. You have raised some of the, we have taken notes of all the issues you have raised. You remember, I am in government. I'm not retired. So even all the criticisms you have been leveling at government, I've been taking note. But tonight was not for me. It was for President Mbeki to deal with these issues, including issues relating to the black professionals. It's not only the engineers who've got a grievance. Black professionals have grievances, and the ANC has policy have paved a way for a significant production of black professionals in our country. It's a result of our policy. So we can't run away when you feel the ANC is not making use of our skills or something is going wrong. We can't run away from you. We take that criticism to heart. And that's something that we will also take forward and deal with. I'm seeing Minister Mkunu on Friday. I'm with him. I might get to him before the president calls him. And we will set up a meeting with the black engineers about the issues you have agreed with Minister Sisulu. So this, what I'm saying is not what the mayor can say, but I'm committing the ANC in our province. You remember this whole thing about renewal? You know that our province was very much in the forefront of that, and we want to do that. We want to build the ANC of which not just us, but future generations will be proud. These young people who are here, who have a lot of energy, want the ANC of which they will be proud. And in Gauteng in particular, we're very proud that we have professionals, black professionals, who are at the center. Sometimes they get moved out, but we're very proud that the black professionals are fighting for their space, because this is where we are building South Africa. There may be a setback today, but we must come back and fight the battle here to build a better country. And there are many formations in our country and many parties you can choose from. But in the end, you know, if we fix this vehicle, we are halfway through our journey. Then starting to form new vehicles along the way. This vehicle called the ANC is fixable. That's what renewal is about. We will have a lecture delivered by President Mbeki on the renewal of the ANC. And we are inviting you. We will make this public. You can join. But thank you very much for all you have done. I'm not taking the place of the mayor. I'm committing the Provincial Executive Committee. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening. Let me start by giving thanks to the program director, Comrade Norman Turalehoko, our Deputy Provincial Secretary, for being a great host. Comrade President, thank you for taking time to share with us the insight on the nature of leadership. Comrade Makura, your wisdom on how to best serve the people who elect us into ANC branches and subsequently into government offices is always appreciated. To all the NEC, the PEC, the REC members present, the business community, please don't forget that elections needs money. Comrade Paxton will call you. The professionals from various sectors present today, including the engineers and the economics, we value you. And the accountants, leaders of government from provincial government. I see the chief whip is here from the Gauteng legislature, Comrade Elias Kumalo. The speaker of Johannesburg, Comrade Nongceba Molwele. MMC presence from Johannesburg, I see MMC Anastasia Mfikwe. Members of the NYTT led by Comrade Nongceba Mhlauli and all the leagues. Distinguished guests present, the media, thank you for making time. Together we can build better communities. The organizers of the event led by Comrade Sipombele, done well, thank you. The MOYN Conference Center for hosting us. Lastly, I would like to urge you to vaccinate. In Gauteng, we have vaccinated more than 32% of adult population, and we need to get to 70% by December to ensure we survive the fourth wave that is coming. And I'm sure, Comrade Premier, you forgot to say that in your opening, that you committed to talk about vaccination wherever you are. In closing, please drive safely. Please go home straight. And don't forget that you can start vaccinating the young ones from the age of 12 to 17 from tomorrow, as announced by the Department of Health. I thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we've come to the end of our session. If you can remain seated until the leadership leaves, and then immediately when the president and the premier have gone and the mayor, you can follow. Thank you, but there are some goodies that are organized for you on your way out. Thanks.
I'm coming back. Look, I need you two to wait for me. I'm coming back.